Howdy, folks, and welcome to another day in the Milky Way. Thank you all for coming. And tonight we got a great show for you. We're going to be talking about magic, history of magic. And of course, just like always, I got this great new book here. It's kind of plain and yellow, but it's the history of magic. It's got all kinds of good stuff in here that I've never heard of before. It talks about so much insensibility to bodily suffering. Oh boy, a witch reveal, revelations in the witch hammer, flying magicians, Satan of the Bible, magic in the pagan and Christian faiths, the white and black elves. Where would we like to start? Right at the beginning, where it's talking about the natural science, the origin of mythology, the history of magic. And that's where we're going to start out with magic and mythology. And as you all know, that's pretty much a big thing. I don't have a lot of pictures for this show, but we're going to do the best we can. So we're doing our thing here, and we're just gonna have to learn about this magic stuff. Where did it come from? Is the myths and mythology really the focal point of where it started from? We're gonna find out tonight. But thank you all for being here, joining me, joining everybody in the chat room. That's talking and enjoying the show. Wouldn't be a good show without the support of all the people out there. I just want to say thank you for that. But let's get right into this, and I'm going to share because you don't need to be looking at my big fat head here. But anyway, I hope you're doing all really well tonight. And there we go. We got something to look at. And like it says, there's the signs and symbols. This is kind of what, astrology, this is magic all based on. Is it? Look at that. Anyway, History of Magic, Part 2 on magic and mythology. I don't know why they got it Part 2, but this is my only book I got on it. So maybe there's a Book 1. This book is pretty old, by the way. It is translated from German by William Howitt. So this was a German book in 2 volumes. I got volume 2. And it is printed, copyright 1970. So there you go. It is an old book. Not that old, but old enough. It says here, as we now have made ourselves acquainted with number of historical facts regarding magic amongst the Greek and Romans, we may be allowed to cast a critical glance backwards on mythical ground of the same, in order to justify certain assertions made above, namely that the Grecian mythology is throughout of a magical character, and the anthropomorphism, the power of nature, is symbolized. That magic reflects itself in mythology. And in the highest antiquity, what a kind of natural philosophy, if the mysteries themselves have remained unsolved riddles, so that we only, in a fragmentary and indirect manner, can determine the inner proceedings and real nature of them, from facts, indications, and signs that have become known. It is clear that all attempts at explanation now must be merely hypothetical. The following hypothesis may therefore be allowed, which really spring entirely from the regular basis of mythology facts. Moreover, their probability does not rest wholly vacillating supports, for they do not lean on invention, but on the natural phenomena which most ancient mythology has wrapped in symbols, and which in the present time are collaborated by magnetic experiences. That's right. Everything it has symbols, people. We got to look for the symbols. And as you can see in these pictures, I'm going to blow this up. There's lots of symbols here. Did you notice these symbols? This is the zodiac signs. Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, Aries, etc., etc. Taurus, you know. So you're looking at these symbols and it's telling a story here. Well, what kind of story is it telling? Let's find out. In the first place, the question will require answering whether mythology be not perhaps a misunderstood natural science, so that at least a great portion of those poetic enigmas may have rested originally on the views of natural philosophy. If this were the case, then magic and the healing art under it would be things also to be understood. What evidences are discoverable by magical cures or the magnetic healing art of mythology? That would be the second question. The proper subject of the following observations, which many may regard as strange, and for which a convincing evidence may not be producible. In the meantime, they touch on many truths which rest on natural philosophy and are calculated to clear up many dark particulars of physical and spiritual life. That's right. It's all natural stuff, spiritual life. Uh, we'll just find out. If any one exerts himself to introduce through natural science useful things for common life, he may, with prudence, calculate confidently on general approbation. But when anyone is disposed to regard the new light acquired by the natural science of Promethean light and endeavors to avail himself of it in this sense to light up the dark corners of our planet, truly the matter is not so easy as lighting up a dark mine. That is, with a Davy lamp, an experiment is not so readily accomplishable. In the meantime, history shows us this by splendid examples that the question is not an impossible thing, and it shows, to say the least, little penetration in historical knowledge when anyone pronounces in a light gossiping tone on the manners which ought to be calmly weighed that they are empty and impractical speculations. Okay, well, that's right, because the the real world does not come out and say that magic is real. They just speculate. They make fun of it. Okay. In mythology, must be taken literally as it stands and as it usually is taken. And then it is an extraordinary, fabulous production, both as to its contents and its origin. There's always a little bit of truth in history, and there's always a little bit of truth in the mythology, as we know. And wouldn't that be said? Besides, there's always a reason for the myth or the mythology to keep on going, passed down from ages, isn't it? What do you people think? I don't know. Let's read on. To philosophy, or it is the perpetual and unraveling knot in which all its fine roots lie hidden, and out of which all the branches and blossoms shoot downwards, in order to sensualize the divine and natural attributes of things. To poetry, it is in the inexhaustible source whence the imagination draws her images and pictures of the physical and spiritual world. For religion, mythology is a chaos through which still the dimmed rays of the sun of the true knowledge of God, which, when down on the deluge, faintly gleaming, while she is sensible of a cosmic process at work in it, by which gradually, in a methodical purification, the true God man raises himself and comes forth as a sublimation. If now we do not look upon mythology as that is so assigned fact, but set to penetrate behind that fact itself and to fathom the origin of things there, we then probably shall seize the right clue and arrive at the true issue. Is mythology an accident? Is mythology an accidental work of the indolent and playful invention, or is it a necessity, development of an instinctive law of nature, a half-conscious, infinite speech of antiquity, advancing through the dark labyrinth of spiritual life? I wonder if it's true. What can you say to that? Is it accidental? Is magic just accidental, or is it the real thing? Is it intentional? Is this fundamental principle of action the creative imagination, or is it the force of the feeling and the religious mind, which therein symbolizes potential or religious ideas? Are the symbols and signs something springing up accidentally, or an attributary work of man? Or are they the original bearers of interpreters or necessary powers, which are only so far mysterious as we have lost the key to the symbolic explanation of the facts? In short, take the matter as we cannot, by all known paths, arrive at a satisfactory conclusion. Spiritual life is invariably only to be comprehended from two sides, the poetic and the religious. Shall then the knowledge of nature and the spiritual power which is derived from experiences find no place? How, if we should ascribe to mythology a scientific foundation and substance? How, or of what kind, and whence ought the theory and the principle to be looked for? Yeah, where do you look for magic? In mythology? I wonder where mythology is. Mythology, where did it come from? Did somebody come from their imagination? I imagine it did. But then again, look at the movies that we see on TV today, like Star Wars, right? What do you say to that? I mean, or Lord of the Rings, sometimes them things can almost be true. They're like almost true. Let's change our picture. We're going to go with this one. What do you think, everybody? How, of what kind, and whence, not the theory. Okay, the real contents of mythology are preemptory, derived from natural history, and the origin of the myths is one of physical, symbolic language, founded on a natural necessity. This is perhaps a result of the inquiries of Schweigger in the work referred to earlier. In his history of the physics of the remotest antiquity, as well as in the many retreats in his yearbooks of chemistry and physics, especially for the year 1826. Schweigger has shown that the lost natural philosophy of antiquity was connected with the most important religious opinions, and that it had throughout thought that means the greatest influence on art and poetry, according to our fundamental ideas on the essential characteristics on the natural laws and development of spiritual strength. Given already in our introduction, there can be no exiting revelations for one special language for poetry and religion as isolated. The human soul is an indivisible unity of spiritual powers. See, they're saying that, we have the power. The sense, which is subjective feeling and representation, unfolds in itself within, comprehends the external objective world, which the understanding and the mind in self-consciousness again shape into a unity, from which, on the other hand, the subjective impulse and conception in the will come forth, again objective in revelation. The operations of the understanding and condition of the will are according to the different reception by the senses of objective things, and according to the individual's constitution, more or less palatable. And the will brings the substance of the operations to the revelation. Yeah, see, you're using your will, your senses, and everything to use as magic. Magic is all of the above. Put it that way. Let's see. Let's go on. Now, what must man originally have had for objects of physical contemplation except nature herself? And we studied this. What is it? It's air, fire, water, and earth. Right? You remember that? Okay. The immediate ideal contemplations of God to which the outer senses are not adapted, we shall here leave quite unnoticed, for we are speaking not of man in paradise, but of fallen human nature. And the circumstances of art must first be attended to. Yes, mythology does create art, doesn't it? The original representations must therefore have certainly been images of natural objects, and the feelings connected with them must consist of pleasure or pain, which would necessarily determine the objective attraction and repulsion of the specter of them. That in young humanity, the representations should be brilliant and the feeling lively in the natural consequence, and hence the combinations of such images would be influenced more by a fugitive fantasy than by a tranquil reason, and this prevailing ascendancy of the imagination over the understanding is strikingly obvious in the ancient mythologies. Theories were the business of reflection and came afterwards. Well, I don't know. Let's see. Where should we go from here? The most ancient monuments of the East and of the Greeks point to a deeper contemplation of nature. Thus, imagination of the poets took out of these the material for their serious as well as their supportive images, and therefore, true poet is actually styled by Plato the teacher of the present and the future. Whence the Platonian madness is of more value than the human rationality, which is so highly lauded, since in these the most eloquent echoes of the past and anticipating notes of the future make themselves heard. See, that guy looks like Plato, doesn't he? He's an alchemist. This guy in the picture here. He's got all kinds of good things going on. He is definitely creating some sort of magic. He's got the moon, the stars, the sun over here. Yes. Now, the thing is basically, I think what they're saying is which came first, the mythology or the magic? Did somebody create something because they, it's like you read the comic books and then somebody created what was in the comic books and brought it to life. So I'm thinking that. That's my thoughts. Okay, let's go on. But is the myth equally a poem? And is it therefore equally empty and fictitious? To such a conclusion, one might easily be led if we receive the mythology merely from Homer and historic times. But the ground and the substance of mythology lie far beyond Homer, whom antiquity represents expressively by the phrase of the wise poet, and as the old man, who not only exalted above the fleeting youth of frivolously, but over the understanding of the man engaged in the affairs of the world, speaks wisdom, drawing from the past knowledge at once for the present and the future. In the language of Homer, all the particularities of the age of man and the innocence of a child are expressed as the fire of youth and the vigor of man and the calm reflection of a gray-haired sage. And there also are reflected in the poems and the sage of the people and the doctrines of the ancient mysteries, so that the mythology is to be regarded as a code of natural philosophy and of religions and poetic computations in which natural science, or rather the objectives and religious relations, furnish the material and the poetical form, which former from Homer first presented to the public in so beautiful and unraveling a manner. Herodotus himself says that Homer and Herodotus have given the genealogy of the gods, have attributed to the names, honors, and arts, and have described their forms. Herodotus gives his view of them merely as an individual, steering clear of the teachings of the priest. For the priest of Dodona drew the names of the gods from Egypt, their beginning originally in Greece, only one nameless god. One nameless god worshipped. Such were the foundations of the myths, where Herodotus collaborates only describing their fuller development and adornment of Homer and Hesiod. Yeah, I'll never get that word right. But it is not merely the question of the Grecian mythology. Every original race has its mythology. The Indians, the Egyptians, and the Scandinavians, and the Germans. Everywhere it stands prior to history and possesses a universal, international resemblance throughout although the remaining means of understanding these mythologies are greater or less in different countries. The German mythology, for instance, is, of all others, the poorest and most subscribed in means of demonstrating its original completeness. Grimm laminates this in his German mythology. Here on a dead ground stands trees whose topmost boughs bear green leaves, and there the ground is still verdant below, but all the trees are dried up. Seldom are we able to call up to us shapes from the far distance twilight into sufficient distinctiveness to be able to recognize and describe them, but as the imagination originally embodied object things and expressive signs and symbols, which is the essential function, the myths have everywhere sprung out of the symbolism, poetical fantasy, and were not first invented by Homer and Herod. In their age, mythology originated in a necessity of nature and in accordance with ideas which nations entertained of the world and with the spirit of their language. Now, I guess that kind of says it all. We're going to kind of stop there and just discuss all of this. So I'm going to go back to here and we'll stop sharing. We're going to go to that. So question, the question is this mythology originated in nations in necessity. I think that's the big bold statement here. Mythology originated in necessity to tell a story that you couldn't print. I mean, just think about it, that if I told you that the pizza is hot, you would probably forget. But if I tell you a story about the rabbit and how fast he was to get to the pizza, and when he got to the pizza, he burned his mouth, you would probably remember that a long, long time. You know, in nature, in accordance with ideas which nations entertained of the world and with the spirit of their language. So, you know, these things could be like, we'll just go with the same thing, you know. So you got the rabbit eating the pizza, but it could also be the rabbit avoiding the big bad troll, and then we could label the troll, say the king, and the rabbit had to run away from the king because, you know, the rabbit is fast and the king was a turtle, you know. And we're putting this in our imagination and telling a story. And by telling a child's story, like in a myth, you can get across the point that you could not get across in that country or that religion or that language. By you could get that point out there without offending people, because you couldn't say, you know, King Henry chased the little man down, blah blah blah. Well, the little man was Joe Blow, and Joe, you know, was running fast. You know, well we're going to name him the rabbit, and we're going to talk about the king. The king is the turtle. You know, see, now it's fun and exciting, and you know, you can relate to a turtle because he's slow and he's round and he's kind of fat like. And then you could relate to the rabbit. You know, he's fast and cunning, and you know, he's small and he can go places and stuff like that. So, but then there's magic in there, and the rabbit, he dug a magical hole and he escaped, you know, and he put a rock over the hole, and the rock was magic, you know, and the rock stayed in place. Well, you know, and that could represent making the story interesting, or maybe how that person escaped, or some magic words he read, or you know, something like that. But then afterwards, was that incorporated into the story also? I mean, you know, we see pictures and then we look at things, and later on we realize that there's way more in that picture than we're looking at. You know, it's kind of like that last picture I had on here, you know, with the alchemist. I mean, there's a lot going on in there. Let's go back to that guy. Let's just take a real quick look at this guy. You know, we're looking at him, and what does this story tell you? You know, this is a magical story. You got the moon and the stars. You know, he's got something going on over here in his little cooking pot, and he's got stuff going down below him too. He's holding something. I don't know what it is he's holding, but whatever this is important. And then of course he's got something over here cooking too. And here's the sun, and the sun is like looking over his shoulder. He's holding some up in his hand, but we can't see it. It looks like another one of these things. But he's doing something in accordance. You notice they show his foot too. His foot is moving. You could write a whole story on this. You know, it's a magical story. Is he is he using magic? Is it telling a story? He's got symbols. He's got some kind of symbol on his coat here, you know, going on. Are these symbols? He's got a little bracelet on or something like that. So you know, he this whole picture is telling a story. He's cooking something here with a fire too. So like I said, this is a myth or whatever. It's telling a story. It's magical. It's trying to convey a story over to you in a magical way without offending anybody. Anyway, that's the whole thing with the symbolism. We're doing symbolism here, and magic is all about symbols. Symboling, you know, it trains your mind, it tricks your mind, tricks other people's minds. You can get, you know, it's a symbol. Anyway, well, enough of that. I probably blew your mind tonight, and you probably have to listen to this twice to actually understand it all out of this book. It's quite the interesting thing. I'm going to find some more good stuff out of here, but we're going to look at this. I got several other things to check on and books, and we're going to go back to Franz Barton here soon, and go back to hermetics because we need to finish up on that. But I wanted to read you a little bit about how myths and legends contribute to magical use, and how magic is incorporated into way more than we can really even probably comprehend. So with that, thank you all for coming. It's been a great evening. I hope you all enjoyed. And remember, go out and do something nice for somebody. Give them a smile, if nothing else. You know, a smile is worth a million. And with that, go out and be the frequency you want to receive, everyone. I love y'all. Peace, everybody.